As the reality of the ultimate sacrifice hits so close to home.
At our house, he is the known.
Sometimes you just gotta use the right thing.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Stephen Cox, and welcome to That Voiceover Podcast, the show for and about the voiceover industry. My guest, Ginny McSwain, is an Emmy Award-winning casting director and animation voice director. She has so many credits. Jimmy Neutron, Chalk Zone, Batman, various Disney projects, Super Friends, The Smurfs, and now most recently for the Nickelodeon show Fanboy and Chum Chum. She is absolutely one of the best in the business, and we're delighted to have her on the show today. Ginny McSwain, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. And boy, you have a great voice. Let's replace Ryan Seacrest with you.
Oh, really? Okay, sounds good. I'll
How
take his money.
that?
So you're always busy. Tell us what projects you're working on right now.
I've been doing a lot of interactive games. That makes me sound like I'm about 100 years old, which I am. But the most recent animated series that I'm working on is G.I. Joe, The Origins, which is back. And it's a very, very smart, intelligent cinematic series that will be coming out on the new Hasbro station, or network rather, called The Hub. And that's my most recent animated series. And then I've been lucky enough to work with BioWare on some brilliant games, Dragon Age being most recently, and Mass Effect 2. I did Mass Effect 1 as well. And that's really kind of where I'm centered right now. I love doing the games. Don't ask me what they're about, but I love coaching the acting on the games.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about how you got your start. You started at Hanna-Barbera and stayed there for a while, yes?
I was at Hanna-Barbera for 8 years, and I thank it. I kiss the ground it stands on, which is desecrated with condos and lofts now. But that's where I started. That was my education. That was my master's of life in a career. And if you thought or ever asked me that I would be doing this, I've just celebrated my 34th anniversary in animation.
Congratulations!
And, thank you. And but I started there in I was there 4 years. 4 years of which was just learning production. But like I said, it was a total fluke that I got into this.
Now, I know this is a good story, so tell us exactly how that happened.
I'll tell you exactly. It's a good story. It's a story that I wish happened to more people today, because I think the world is just so much harder to do anything you want to do. You can do it, but it's just harder. And I was an actress, so I put that first and foremost for what I do. And I just graduated from college and been married and been out in Los Angeles about a year and a half. And I used to pass Hanna-Barbera on the freeway every day. And this is December of 1975, and I was doing this equity waiver show, Man in the Moon Marigolds, with Annie Potts over in Hollywood. And I just pulled over. I had this huge Monte Carlo that was about as big as my house. And I pulled over in the lot. This is beginning of December 1975, and it was all dark. Hallways were dark. I walk into the lobby, and there's a receptionist sitting there. And I say, what do I have to do to fill out an application just to work here? Thinking, well, I've been a bank teller, I've been a chairside assistant, worked in a bookstore, I got fired by an agent. I thought, maybe Hanna-Barbera, I can sweep the floors or something. So, Flintstones and all the lore,
Sure.
Huckleberry Hound, all that great stuff that we grew up with. And this is where God was shining down on me, or my lucky star. And there was a producer there named Art Scott. And you have to realize one thing about Hanna-Barbera. All the people there were the originals. So all the producers were like in their 60s and 70s then. And Bill Hanna was still in command of the studio, and Joe Barbera was still the creative force. And so I got, long story short, the producer that happened to be talking to the receptionist says to me, "Oh, do you have an art portfolio?" And of course, I lied and said, "Yes, I do," because I had also been an art minor in college. So he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, come back tomorrow. I'm going to introduce you to the art director. If anybody knows this wonderful man, Iwo Takamoto." And of course, I didn't know who he was. This is the art designer of Scooby-Doo and all their major shows. And but I was fearless, thank God. Otherwise, I would never have returned. And I went home and grabbed everything I could off the walls and off the refrigerator and cards that I doodled on and all this stuff, and I bring it in. How I had the balls to do this, I'll never know. And good to his word, Mr. Art Scott had me meet with Iwo Takamoto. And I sat there in front of this little 3 foot, he seemed like he was 3 feet high, he was very short. And I sat there, and I was on my way to do a performance of the play, as I mentioned, and I was kind of looking at the clock and going, I wonder if this guy's going to hire me because I got to get going, blah, blah, blah. And he was asking me some questions, but he looked at my portfolio and was kind. I'm sure he was laughing up his sleeve, but what he was impressed by was that I had a college degree, which is the only time in my career that's ever mattered. Because with all the wonderful artists walking in and out of the studio, most of them have gone to, Art Institute or Chicago,
right.
I mean, Pasadena art schools, all that. But he was impressed with the fact that somebody went to college, which just slayed me. But I didn't know that then. I was just like, okay, I'm fine, bye. And he said, and he did say this because he was very hard to read. It was like talking to a wall. He had no expression. And he said, well, we're not hiring right now. And I thought, oh, great, blew me off. But, I will call you. I think I can put you in the art department and be the art department head's assistant. But that won't be till March. And but I'll call you. And I was like, yeah, right. So I looked at my watch, did my play, went back to work for the dentist. And sure enough, in March of 76, I got this phone call from the art department saying, we'd like to hire you, and the rest is history. So long story short, Stephan, I got in there. I was just awed by, I got to experience every department from ink and paint to, oh my God, the artwork used to be, I was in the presentation department, and the artwork is what used to sell the shows. Because Joe Barbera would meet with the only three networks then, and he would pitch for the Saturday morning season, and he would get, the Joe Barbera show was something to see. He was a tremendous salesman and entertainer, and he would pitch something off a storyboard on a wall and sell a show. And so I got to see all this. I got to see what happened when the cells were Xerox. There were cells floating everywhere. Now you can barely get a hold of one except on eBay.
Sure.
And it was really a time that so many people in this business that come into production don't ever see. They just go right to their department, and they're there until they have to leave and maybe get hired back to get another promotion or another part of the industry.
Right.
But I got to see it all for 4 years. And then I worked with a lot of people. I worked for the head writer. I worked in development, which was my least favorite. And but I was also auditioning for some of the shows. So
you had the consummate training at Hanna-Barbera. At what point did you transition into casting and directing?
I'll tell you. I was there 4 years. I was in the last stop. It was art department, head writer, development. And then I was like bored to tears. And this is what, Jane Barbera was a really good friend of mine and fan of mine. She was running production. And people, when you had light behind your eyes, people listened. They used to come to my play. They thought I was kind of a wild card anyway. And, I had great passion and great energy. And I had done some animated shows, voiceover-wise. I had acted in them. And just little things like, Secretary Number 3 and I scratched tracks for Cindy Williams and, stuff like that. And so they knew I really liked it. And I noticed that there wasn't anybody paying attention to any of the, I'm going to date myself here and call them demos, the tapes, reel-to-reels. Nobody paid any attention to these. They would come in and, there were like 3 or 4 different producers directing their own shows. And now you notice I'm saying producers, not voiceover directors. And I just said, well, you know what? Why don't we consolidate this, and why don't I go in with each producer and, take notes or do whatever they want, and I'll be the one that takes in all the tapes and blah, blah, blah. And magically, I'm sure they didn't listen to me, it just happened to come to fruition that Joe Barbera had worked with Gordon Hunt from the Mark Taper Forum. Gordon had directed a play of Joe Barbera's years before that. And Gordon had also come in and directed a primetime animated series for HB called Wait Till Your Father Comes Home. And so all of a sudden, magically, I hear this man, Gordon Hunt, is being hired to do all the voiceover directing at Hanna-Barbera, which really chapped the ass of a lot of the producers who'd been doing their own shows. But everything, old is new again, very cyclical, because a lot of that, the creator-driven, writer-driven animation shows are back. They don't want voiceover directors. We're like the carny folk. They think, we don't know what we're talking about. But anyway, so Gordon comes in, and they just magically said, okay, well, we're going to put you with Gordon Hunt, and we're going to start this new department. And that's how that came to be. I assigned myself casting director, and he was the recording director.
So now I want to talk about your work as an animation voice director. Most people are very familiar with what voiceover people do, and certainly what animators do, but not so much the directors. So tell us what goes into directing an animation voiceover session.
Well, I'll tell you. The voiceover director has to jump aboard a running ship that's already been written, sometimes boarded, and we have to take the whole project and creative style in and spit it back and be the translators, be the communicators to the actors. That's if a producer or a writer, I'm going to say in the 21st century, trusts us to do that. Sometimes I think a lot of people direct having to be a waitress because we're just repeating, some people, not me, because I'm probably the biggest loose cannon in the business. We have to work with politically with everybody, politically correctly with everybody. We have to be, easy to get along with. But I like to know that I have a big hand in the style of the acting and watching and coaching the acting. That's what I think the job is, not just to spit back whatever the writer or producer gives me.
You have worked with legends in the animation world, Casey Kasem, Frank Welker, Dawes Butler, Mel Blanc, and so many more. And you said, you're tough by reputation. But early on, did you ever get intimidated? All
the time. I'll tell you something. Think about it on the voiceover director side. We are slammed together with people that we've been fans of, that we have watched in movies for years. And all of a sudden, we are talking to these people. And don't forget, I was pretty young doing this, talking to, Paul Winchell. I mean, I remember being very intimidated by Paul Winchell. I mean, and I grew up, Jerry Mahoney was my idol, you know what I mean? But to answer that, yeah, it's very intimidating. I think now it's easier for me because I'm a certain age and I've been there and back, and if you don't want to listen to me, it's your problem. It's not mine. But in the beginning, you come in as a fangirl. I still think there are certain people that I will tell you this, Stefan, 98% of the celebrity factor, and there's so much of that in casting now. I mean, I don't need to tell your listeners how big this is, and I don't think anyone really cares, but of course they put celebrities to sell projects, and I'm not going to take the bait on this one. But because we have way too many of layers of fabulous talent in Los Angeles that just kills me that they're not used more. But that's my own little political stand on that. But then there's this. I get this little B kind of cartoon series called Camp Candy. And I got to work with the fabulous John Candy, who became a personal friend of mine. So there you go. Or Tim Curry, who I adore. But the first time I directed Tim Curry, I thought I needed to wear my Depends, I thought, oh my God, that's Tim Curry in there. And I remember the little anal retentas in the booth said to me, well, his accent's kind of going all over the place. I said, and I remember that was the first time my balls flew and puffed up, and I said, "That you've got Tim Curry in there. I'm going to let him do whatever he wants to. As long as it's not too slow, I'm going with this."
Now, as you mentioned, you've also done voiceover work yourself. You played Lois Lane on Superman, did some work on My Little Pony, I believe. How did that inform your work as a director?
I went, man, this is harder than it looks. Huh. And what really amazes me is that I did a series at Hanna-Barbera. It was called Hey, It's the King. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And looking back on the balls I had to just get up, and it was Lenny Weinrib, another great who's now gone. And a lot of the old-timey people were in the show. My friend Susan Silo and I. That's when I met Susan Silo, who's a wonderful voiceover talent. And she does this great sped-up kind of voice that she does naturally. But I remember standing there with these people, and, I just landed. It was pretty much my own voice with enthusiasm. I didn't know what I was doing, mic technique. I just hoped it was coming out okay, out okay on the other side. And, I came close to a few auditions and that I almost got. But then, I did get, a series or two. But I didn't know what I was doing. So when I got on the other side of the glass and could absorb the brilliance of the people we revere, the Michael Bells, the Frank Welkers, oh my God, Don Messick, Peter Cullen, names I hope people that are real fans remember, because they're still out there, and I look at them and think I'm so fortunate to have met them and worked with them. But that's how my ear trained to do my job even better. Performing was not a real thing for me anymore, and because I always thought someone could do it better, and I never wanted to go into a session saying, well, you have to, I need to get my health and welfare, so cast me. I never did it. I always left it to the other people. And I felt that they were much better, even for the incidentals. I just always thought that was a better protocol than to cast myself.
So apart from the celebrity trend that you've already touched on, what are some other trends that you've seen recently in animation? What are some things that actors should be aware of?
Well, watch what's going on in the live action, in the movies. Any trends that you see going on in there. I mean, you're going to see a lot of Avatar-oriented criteria, development. I was watching Clone Wars the other night, which is a beautiful, beautiful piece of art moving around. Was I impressed with the voices? No, not really. It was okay. But watching it, wow, it was just magical. So it's that whole fantasy, otherworldly look, in a lot of 3D, of course, and everybody's trying to be more real. They're trying to tap themselves in the CG. Let me look at the DreamWorks Dragon movie that's out right now. Look at, the Meatballs movie. Look at even the Bloody Chipmunks, They're all topping themselves on what they can do with the animation and the 3D and the whole 9 yards. So those are the things. Trends are whatever kids want. A lot of trends are around teenagers. Are the leads, male or female, whoever they want to gear the movie to or series to. You look at the Nickelodeon lineup, the Disney TV lineup, and they're all fighting to see what kids want to watch. And I think it's all guesswork. At one time it was about skateboards. At one time it was about, Avatar. Is the biggest one I can see for the future.
Well, Ginny McSwain, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wonderful stories and insights on the podcast with us.
My utmost pleasure. Thank you, Stefan.
That Voiceover Podcast is a co-production of Half Full and Get Creative Inc. Thanks for listening. I'm Stefan Cox.